Hello, my amazing ChetChatters. If I tell you that today this one single session on conditionals will help you understand everything in one shot, would you be delighted? Well, I am certainly delighted to tell you that conditionals is a very important topic in English grammar, and I have seen many students getting stuck and confused in this topic. So I have made this concept of conditionals very easy to understand, and you can take screenshots too along the way. So let's get going. Hey, this is Chetna and you're on ChetChat, and this content is also available as a podcast on Skill Up with ChetChat. Conditional sentences have two clauses. Very simply, we can call them the if clause and the main clause. Now, the if clause is the condition and the main clause is the result. Example, if you smile, you feel happy. Or if you watch this full video, you will understand conditionals perfectly. Now, there are 5 types of conditional sentences. Zero conditional, first, second, third, and the mixed conditionals. And we're going to look at each one of them and the differences between them. Let's talk about the zero conditional. If I give Simbi food, she eats it. There's no doubt in this. It's not like sometimes she eats it or sometimes she doesn't. It's a simple rule. If I give her food, she eats it. If you freeze water, it becomes solid. These are facts, general truths. If you mix red and blue, you get purple. Both the if clause and the main clause are in simple present tense, and this is the zero conditional. If you want to learn English, watch ChetChat videos. The first conditional. If I give Simbi food, she will eat it. It's likely. She might eat it if I give it to her. Possibly. It's a real chance. Probably. If I have time, I will finish the letter. There's no rule. There's no certainty. I'm just saying that I will do it if I have the time. If you don't leave, I will call the police. The if clause is in simple present tense and the main clause is in simple future tense with the use of will. Some other modals like might or shall can also be used, but we will talk about that in detail later. But most of the time, you're going to see the first conditional with a will in the main clause. The second conditional. If I gave Simbi food, she would eat. Now, I'm imagining that if something had happened in the past, some condition in simple past tense, then it would lead to a different result in the present. If I gave Simbi food 5 minutes ago, she would be eating it right now. The main clause uses the would. We're going to discuss all this in detail soon, but at this stage, just make a note of the fact that the if clause is in simple past tense and the main clause uses a would plus infinitive or would plus present tense. What is an infinitive? The infinitive is the base form of the verb, the first form of the verb, to run, to speak, to eat. If I had a big house, I would grow flowers in the garden. If I had a car, I would drive it to work. Someone is dreaming out here, imagining something that is unreal and hypothetical. Now, the third conditional. If I had given Simbi food, she would have eaten. It's like I'm repenting that I did not give it to her. If I had known you were in hospital, I would have visited you. I'm feeling bad that I did not do something in the past. Again, this is unreal. Nothing of this is happening. Someone is just thinking and imagining and repenting that if they had done something different in the past, then some other result would have happened in the past. If I had studied harder, I would have passed my exams. Both the clauses are in the past. The if clause is in the past perfect tense. If you had given me your phone number, I would have called you. The main clause has would have with the past participle. Now, what is past participle? It is the third form of the verb eaten, run, spoken. Now here, this is just an overview for you to get a basic understanding. Now we're going to get into more details, but before that, let me give a quick shout out to Pratyusha for leaving this message under my last video. And if you want a shout out, leave me a message with the hashtag ChetChatters. Notice, in the 0 and the first conditional, the if clause is in the simple present tense. The second conditional has the if clause in simple past tense, and the third conditional has the if clause in past perfect tense. So this is your clue. Once you see the if clause in the sentence and you identify the tense, you can get a fairly good idea of which conditional it is already. And if you want a detailed class on tenses, then take a look at this video, and I'm going to drop a link below. Now, at the end of the if clause, we put a comma. Now, we can reverse this also. In the sentence, we can put the main clause first and the if clause later also, and nothing is going to change. It's perfectly fine. The only difference is that in such cases, we don't require a comma. Now, look at the main clause of each conditional. Basically, you see an if clause in simple present tense. The moment you see that, you know it's either a 0 conditional or a first conditional. If you spot a will or a modal verb in the main clause, it is the first conditional. And if you see simple present tense in the main clause, then it is 0 conditional. Simple, isn't it? The main clause, let's talk about it, in the second conditional has a would, whereas in the third conditional, there is a would have. Now, other modals can also be used, but the same logic will apply. Second conditional should and third conditional should have. Now, take a screenshot of this and save it for later. So, the 0 and first conditionals are real truths or real possibilities. The second and third conditional are unreal, imagination or repentances. Impossible situations that never actually happened or never had a chance of actually happening. Okay, let's look at each of the 4 conditional statements in greater detail. The 0 conditional has both the if clause and the main clause in simple present tense. And we can always reverse these clauses. If I wake up early, I go to the gym. If it rains, the grass gets wet. These are facts, habits, and general truths. If you heat ice, it melts. Quite obvious, isn't it? If it's a Friday, there's a new video on ChetChat. You all know that already. It's a fact. If I find time, I practice French. This is a habit. Nothing changes. Whenever I find time, I just pick up my language app and I start practicing French. J'adore les français. You do well if you study. Once again, you can interchange the order of the 2 clauses. The grass gets wet when it rains. Now, both the condition and the result are in simple present tense. Notice also, we've used when in place of if, and we're going to talk about this difference soon. But before that, also notice the punctuation. When the main clause comes before the if clause, the comma disappears. If you know any such examples, leave me a comment below. So, the way I remember the 0 conditional is that it's like someone is stating the obvious. Yes, we know that when the sun rises, it's daytime, and this is obvious, isn't it? O for obvious is easy to remember for 0. If versus when. Mostly we can use them interchangeably. When you heat ice, it melts is the same as saying if you heat ice, it melts. But look at these 2 sentences on the screen. If you go to their house, give them flowers. And when you go to their house, give them flowers. What is the difference? There is a doubt when you use if. Like if you go means it's possible that you don't go at all. But with when is more certainty. It's like we are expecting that you will go. It's just a question of when and what time you go. In conditional sentences, if or when can be used and the rules remain exactly the same. All right, we're talking about the first conditional. The if clause is in the simple present tense and the main clause has a will plus an infinitive. The infinitive we saw earlier is the base form of the verb. If it rains tomorrow, we will cancel the picnic. If you sit down, you will feel better. Once again, we can also switch the clauses. You will feel better if you sit down. Notice, these are not rules. There's no certainty. It's not like every time it rains, the picnic gets cancelled. This is about a likely future outcome, something that is real and possible. If you are free tomorrow, we could meet up. Will is the most common thing that you find in the first conditional, but you can use other modals like could, shall, might, can, or should. The if clause is always in simple present tense, and the main clause is going to be talking about a likely future outcome with will or a modal and the verb in the base form. If you rest, you might feel better. Once again, we can interchange the clauses. You will miss the train if you don't hurry. Now you've seen this, unless. It is also used instead of if plus not. Example, if you don't practice, you will not get a good score in math. Can also be written as unless you practice, you won't get a good score in math. Won't is the short form for will not. Sometimes the examiner might trick you with this. Now, all you have to do is pick up that unless, remove it, put if plus not, and then apply the basic rules. So the way I remember the first conditional is that it's like someone doing future planning. If it rains, we will cancel the picnic. If it doesn't rain at night, we will go for a trek in the morning. You get the picture? First conditional is equal to future planning. F for first, F for future planning. Easy to remember? Okay, now let's look at the difference between zero and first conditional. Both have the if clause in simple present tense. The difference lies in the main clause. For zero conditional, this is also in simple present tense. And for the first conditional, this is will plus the infinitive form of the verb. Basically, when the if clause is in simple present tense, there are only two options for the main clause. Either it will be in simple present tense, or it will have will or a modal plus an infinitive. And you can decide whether it's obvious, like a rule or a habit, or it is a future planning of a possible situation. Example, if I wake up early, I go to the gym. Is a habit. It always happens like this. It's obvious. I will do that because I always go to the gym. If I wake up early, I will go to the gym. It's future planning for tomorrow, more like a New Year resolution. All right, now the second conditional. The if clause is in simple past tense, and the main clause is mostly would plus infinitive. But sometimes you can find it as would plus present continuous. Let's take some examples. If I won a lottery, I would buy a house. This is the most common example of the second conditional. It's like someone is dreaming. If I had more time, if I had more money, if I had a rich boyfriend, and so on. If I had more time, I would write a book. These are imaginary, unreal situations, and someone is dreaming about this. If you had a choice, which country would you live in? Hypothetical question. Now leave me a comment below, by the way, telling me, if you had the choice, which country would you live in? If I spoke German, I would be living in Germany right now. The main clause is would plus present continuous. The would is always there in the main clause, and the situation becomes imaginary. In the second conditional, the condition is in the past. The if clause is in the past, but the result is in the present or the future. If I were you, I wouldn't give them flowers. Remember sometime back we said if you go to their house, give them flowers, to which your friend might reply, if I were you, I would not give them flowers. They love plants and they might get upset at flowers being sold. Notice I said, if I were you. In the past tense, when you're making a wish, we say, if I were a rich man, leave me a comment if you have heard that song. If it rained last night, the grass would still be wet. This is hypothetical. If it rained, maybe it didn't rain, in which case the grass could be dry as well. So the way I remember the second conditional is that it's like someone dreaming, like a sci-fi fantasy. S for second, S for sci-fi. If I was born in London, I would be the princess. Well, if I was Mickey Mouse, I would be in Disneyland today. Okay. Now let's summarize the differences between 0, 1 and 2. The first two have their if clauses in simple present tense. The second conditional has a if clause in simple past tense. We're looking back at something. As for the main clause, in 0 conditional, it's in the present tense. In the first conditional, it has a will plus infinitive. In the second conditional, it is a would plus infinitive. Example, 0 conditional. If I drink tea, I add some milk to it. It's a habit. I always do this. It's a general rule. It's obvious. First conditional. If I drink tea, I will add some milk to it. A specific future possibility. If at some time I choose to drink tea, then I will make sure I add some milk to it. Future planning. Second conditional. If I drank tea, I would add some milk to it. Dreamer. Imagining that if they had tea at some point in the past, then they would add some milk to it. Well, dream, dream, dream along. Now the third conditional. Basically, just take the second conditional and add have to both sides. Sounds like a mathematical equation. What do we get? We get the if clause in past perfect, and the main clause has a would have plus a past participle. If I had been kind to Anna, she would have been my friend. And by interchanging the clauses, we get something like, I could have won the race if I hadn't hurt my foot. Now, these are impossible situations in the past, and the person saying them is typically regretting or repenting. Now, this person was not kind to Anna. She is not their friend right now. But they're just repenting that if they were kind to her, she would have been their friend. Also, they did not win the race since their foot was hurt. This is impossible and unreal. But they are thinking that perhaps in the past, if their foot was not hurt, then they might have won the race. Notice I said might have instead of could have. And we also can use other modals here like should have, could have, must have, etc. If I had attended class, I would have understood the topic. I could have topped my class if I had studied regularly. So the way I remember the third conditional is like someone is regretting, repenting, and looking back at all the past events thinking that if they were different. T for third. T is also the last letter of regret, repent, and past. If I had been more careful, I could have saved them from drowning. They've drowned already. Now I'm just looking at the past and thinking of an impossible alternative solution. So here is the overview once again of the 4 conditionals and their different clauses, and I strongly suggest that you take a screenshot of this. It's a snapshot of the differences, okay? 0 conditional. If you really want, you can make it happen. Simple present tense in both. First conditional. If you really want, you will make it happen. If plus simple present, will plus infinitive in the main clause. If you really wanted, you would make this happen. Second conditional. If plus simple past and would plus past participle in the main clause. Finally, if you had really wanted, you would have made it happen. Add have to both sides of the second conditional and you get the third conditional. If plus past perfect and would have plus past participle. Time for mixed conditionals. I will make this very, very easy for you. Now, mixed conditionals are made by mixing up the second and the third conditional. We take the if clause from one and mix it with the main clause from the other one. Let's see them one by one. The first one, if I were rich, I would have lived in France. The if clause is from the second conditional and the main clause is from the third conditional. But again, it's unreal. I'm not rich and I don't live in France. If I didn't have school, I would have come to your house. Now that was one type of mixed conditional. Now let's take a look at the second type of mixed conditional. If I had taken my umbrella, I wouldn't be sick today. The if clause is from the third conditional and the main clause from the second conditional. You're repenting over a past situation. If we had used the GPS, we wouldn't be lost right now. In reality, we are lost and we are just regretting our decision of not using the GPS. So there you have it, a full marathon mega session on conditionals. I hope that helps you, and if you like this, come back for more next Friday. Happy learning!